Welcome to the No Soundbites Allowed podcast on the Voss Political Commentary channel. Join us as we delve into the issues that affect our lives with more respect than a headline or a bullet point. Special thanks to our subscribers and advertisers for making this possible. And now, let's start with this episode's revelations. Hello, everybody. Looks like Facebook is playing its games once again. It's very interesting as I start up here. And let me start off with, hello, everyone. This is Michael Voss, the Dragon of the Southern Tier, with the No Soundbites Allowed Simulcast on Facebook Live, speaking with you on September 29th. And I hope everyone is well. I hope everyone's had some good rest. And we're going to have a very interesting show today. A very interesting program, and I'm going to look forward to talking with everyone. But let me start off with, it's amazing that in the last 4 of these that I've done about 17 of these now, I've noticed that there has been an increasing amount of trouble with Facebook. It's just been amazing how much trouble Facebook has in providing this simulcast. And it's not that I don't have signal. I have great signal, and I have strength, and I'm able to get everything on Facebook and communicate on Facebook with my phone, which is being able to provide this to you. But yet, every time I'm noticing that when I do this, it somehow Facebook has trouble being able to push this out and allow the public to be able to see it. So at the moment, we're having some trouble letting people know that it's here and that I'm actually live. And it's kind of sad. It's actually very sad that this is not something that people can see, because Facebook is just messing with us, and that's a shame. I'm sending out the message on Facebook as we speak. So as I'm doing that, and I'm talking to people and letting them know that it's on and that we're speaking, that they can join in and speak with us, I'm just, it's very upsetting. And I hate to have dead air, and I hate about that. I hate to do that. But I want people to know that this is upsetting. I've noticed that as there have been more issues that are more and more important to people, when we're talking about taxes, when we're talking about voting, when we're talking about Republican values, when we're talking about the issues that are affecting everyone every day. We're talking about what's going on in the Senate right now with the confirmation of Justice Kavanaugh, when we're talking about the red flag legislation and job cuts and the potential of the midterms for 2018. It just is amazing to me that Facebook is just not putting that information out. It's just blocking. And we've seen this, and I've talked about it, about the censorship. This is compelled speech. This is censorship. When you're denied the opportunity to be able to be aware and to speak with people about what's going on, that's bad. That's what I call censorship. That's what's called denial of the public. When you're not able to speak to people and they're not able to find information because Google or Twitter or Facebook have their algorithms and limit the number of people who can find the information and make it difficult to find the information about what's going on because they don't like it, because their censors don't want you to know. That is troubling. That is dangerous. That is one of the most dangerous things that are happening right now in social media, is that people aren't allowed to know. They're denied the opportunity to find out what's going on. And it's very upsetting. Very upsetting. And I don't know, it's driving me nuts here that they're not letting this on, that they're not letting people know what's going on and letting them hear what's happening. So I'm kind of upset right now. Actually, I'm very upset right now that this is happening. And I'm not even sure, and I'm checking to see if it's even showing that this is actually going on live. And that's why I use 2 different systems. I have my computer and I have this. Yeah, it looks like it's going out there. Let's see. Yeah, it's going out there with a delay. So that's kind of upsetting. Very upsetting, actually, that we're able to see this with a delay. well, I don't look horrible, but it's amazing to me that Facebook, I'm looking at this live on Facebook, and it's not even showing to me that it's actually going on, that I can see myself registered. It's just not showing. That's a shame. That's horrible that Facebook is not allowing this to get out there and letting people know what's going on. That's one of the worst things that we can see happen. It's troubling to me that Facebook would deny people the opportunity to have a conversation, that Facebook would deny people the opportunity to know that there's a conversation that can be had. It's horrible. This is troubling, and everyone should be very upset that we're seeing this kind of compelled speech, this kind of denial of information being shared on the most critical issues that are affecting us today. And I'm waiting a moment to see if some people, to see that more people are involved and able to reach this and be able to see that they're actually getting connected to this so that we can actually have this conversation. It just troubles me that Facebook would deny people that they hide this through their algorithms with Twitter. And this is not something that I'm guessing about. We know for a fact that Twitter and Facebook and Google have absolutely put out algorithms. They've admitted it to the Senate and to the Congress that they have programs that limit and restrict and hide any kind of views that are Republican and conservative and not any kind of ideas that are not social justice and limited, democratic or liberal. And they have that out there. And they keep calling them errors, like, air quotes, errors, that these are problems, that they're fixing them. Except they created these programs, that they created these algorithms in the first place with an express purpose to be able to limit thought and limit speech and deny people the opportunity to know what's going on. And that's terrifying to me. That's upsetting to me. Because I want to talk about something that's very important. I want to talk about what's going on in the Senate. I want to talk about what's going on with Kavanaugh. I want to talk about what's going on with Dr. Ford and how this is going to affect us, not only in the 2018 elections, but in 2020 and for decades to come. And this is a massively important issue. And, Facebook is just denying people that opportunity to have that conversation, to talk about this issue that is actually very important to people, that makes a lot of difference in people's lives. And it's just denying people that. And that's terrifying to me, that Facebook would do that, that it would limit people so severely and stop them from being able to speak with each other on the issues that matter so much. Because we know that Facebook and Google and Twitter have said that they don't agree, and therefore they want to try and affect that outcome. But that's okay. I'm not going to stop. That's not going to prevent me from being able to have the conversation with the public. That's not going to stop me from being able to reach out to people. That's not going to stop me from telling people what's going on and what I see, and to share this with everyone. So I'm going to put this out there because we deserve to have that conversation. And that is exactly their business model, is that they actually are going to put out information to the public, that they're going to let people know. And that's why they have a Facebook Live, so that people can talk with each other and have conversations and see what's going on with each other's lives. But instead, what they're doing with Facebook and Twitter and Google and social media is they're denying people that opportunity. And I want to say hello to Tina, and I want to say hello to Tyler Flood, that they've joined in, even with what I'm seeing off of Facebook, that they've delayed this, that this is a delay in the conversation, and that they're making it very difficult for people to be able to find this and to be able to join in. That's sad. But what we are going to talk about, and now that you guys have joined me, I'm going to go right into it. We're talking about what's been happening with the Senate, what's happening in our government that everyone missed while we were looking at what was happening in the Senate, and how these things are going to affect us going forward. That's what I want to talk about. Of course, this is a conversation with you, the public, directly with you, the public, which very few of our elected officials actually do. So let's actually have that conversation so that you can ask me what you're thinking about. And we can talk about these things and have a conversation about that. So please, if there's at any point you have a question, just type it in, let me know, and I'll be happy to answer any question and talk about these things, because that's how we make our country greater. That's how we make our lives better. That's how we maintain the quality of life and the freedoms that we've all struggled and lived for, and why some people have died for. So I'm going to go into all of that. But let's start off with the things that you probably haven't been told about this week, things that you didn't hear about that I think are pretty important. One of the biggest things is that this week, most people missed H.R. 6760, and that is the tax cuts. Now, I know there's been a lot of conversation about the tax cuts people have heard about, depending on which media you're looking at. You've either heard from a lot of the more liberal media that the tax cuts are the worst thing that's possibly happening, and it's destroying people's lives. If you're looking to accountants and you're listening to other media out there, you're finding out that actually it's been spurring the economy and people are doing better. And by the way, Anfield, hello, and thank you for joining us. And please, everyone, to share this. But that's now permanent. So the lower tax rates that you have right now are lower, and that's going to be permanent. And well, it's passed the House, I should say. The House voted, it's H.R. 6760. And I'll put a link on that in a moment. And that means that you're going to be able to enjoy these lower rates and keep more of your money, and the government gets less of your money to spend. So that's a very positive thing. And we saw that it went through, and once the Senate is done with what's going on, we'll talk about it in a moment, we would expect that it would pass there too, and you'll be able to keep that. But keep in mind, the midterm elections are absolutely vital, because if you do not vote, and it is already said that the Democrats they've mentioned this many, many times this year, all of them, that they're looking to increase your rates. Anthony Brindisi, when I spoke with him, has mentioned that he doesn't like the tax cuts and he wants to increase the personal taxes and the corporate taxes in New York State and the nation. He said that. It's on record. That it's not something made up. Anthony Brindisi will admit that anywhere he goes. And he'll say, well, the tax cuts went too far, and so he wants to correct that, which means he wants to increase your taxes. He wants to take more of your money so the government can spend it, because the government is smarter than you, according to Anthony Brindisi. And he's only one example. And you can look it up. It's back in March. We've heard it from Nancy Pelosi. We've heard it from Chuck Schumer. We've heard it from a lot of people that they are going to increase taxes and take more of your money if they win. So that's something to keep in mind. But at this moment, we saw $3.8 trillion for the tax cut was made, is intended to be permanent by the House. And they just voted on that. And I should also mention, in New York State, only 4 of our representatives, 4 members of Congress, the House of Representatives, actually voted to make sure that you get to keep more money than what the Democrats want to do, and take more of your money. That's a fact. You can look it up. And they were for to be exact, it was the New York 22nd, the New York 23rd, the New York 24th, and the New York 27th. Those are the only areas. Those are the only members of Congress. Congresswoman Tenney, Congressman Tom Reed, Congressman John Katko, and Congressman Chris Collins, and again, the 22nd is Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. They're the only ones who voted in New York State for you to keep your money. And everyone else voted to increase your taxes. And that's kind of telling, and that's kind of scary. So I wanted to bring that up, and I thought that was rather important, because it also goes along with something else that you probably haven't heard about and no one's talked about, because we've been talking about the Senate, and I'm building up to that. What we saw is that this week there were 120 Democrats in the House of Representatives voted to give illegal aliens the right to vote, and to take away your right to vote. And when I say that, let me be very clear. 120 out of the 173 Democrats in the House of Representatives right now. They had a vote. The vote was on H-Res 1071. That was this week. And it was expressly to say that illegal aliens should not have the right to vote, which I think is pretty simple, very straightforward, and it's already in the Constitution. Only Americans have the right to vote in America. But the Democrats want to give, and are expressly trying to give, the right to vote to illegal aliens. Now, what's kind of interesting about that is that of the Democrats that are out there, 71 of them did not have the balls to be actually honest and tell people that they wanted illegal aliens to have the right to vote. 69 Democrats decided to vote present, which means they didn't want to have it on their record that they voted to try and give illegal aliens the right to vote, which is deceptive. It's insulting. It's amazing that they didn't want to be honest. They are running for and voting for the ability to give the illegal aliens the unconstitutional right to be able to vote. And that means that they can change everything that's going on in our government at this time. That they are able to take away your guns, to increase your taxes, to give everything to anyone and everyone else in the world and take it away from you. That is what they voted for. And 69 of the Democrats went out there and they were not willing to let you know where they stand. They actually hid their vote by saying present rather than actually going on record, which I think is insulting because voters deserve to know the truth. And again, this is something you're not going to hear about because the news media didn't cover it this week. Everyone was talking about the Senate, and I think that's actually critical for people to understand what's going on there. Now, Tina mentioned a question. If it's in the Constitution that only Americans can vote, wouldn't they need to do a constitutional amendment to allow that? That's a good question. And actually, Tina, no, that's not needed. If we pass a law that has, whatever the law may be, if it passes through the House and it passes through the Senate, then it's a law. And without the power, it doesn't need to have the power of an amendment. As long as it's been passed and it is duly found law, then it's there. Unless the Supreme Court would then reverse it. And again, we're coming back to the Supreme Court. So I'm trying to think of a law that makes sense to be a good example of that. The various laws that we've seen that restrict the Second Amendment, whether it's the gun bans as an example. Anytime they pass a gun ban, now you still have the Second Amendment constitutional right to own a gun, but because a ban has been done past the House, past the Senate, then it is legal for the government to say you can't own this type of firearm. And if you do, you are a criminal until it reaches the Supreme Court. And then the Supreme Court will make a decision based on that gun ban, whether it's constitutional or not, depending on how it's written and who's in the Supreme Court. And then that's either upheld or not. But it's separate of the amendments themselves. So, yes, if you pass the law that said, if the House of Representatives passed a law and the Senate passed the law that said that illegal aliens have the right to be able to vote in America, in American elections, then they would have that right until it went to the Supreme Court. And then, depending on how the Supreme Court made the decision, that would either go through or not. So the Supreme Court is absolutely vital and important and critical to all of our lives in so many, many ways. In so many, many ways. And it's a little bit shocking because it's what it means can be devastating to people. It can be absolutely devastating to people. So I don't know what to say about that because it's so important. I mean, it's really, really important. To have a Supreme Court that actually stands for the people and stands for our rights, that makes all the difference. Because we're seeing that 120 out of 173 Democrats and one Republican believe that illegal aliens deserve the right to vote, to be able to take away your rights by the law. They can do that. And that's just terrifying. That is absolutely terrifying to me. And I think it's just it's the worst thing that could possibly happen. It really is. And I think more people should be terrified of this. Really, really terrified of this, because it makes no sense. Now, I'm also getting some messages as we're going and I'm talking, so please, if it looks like I'm doing something here, I'm just letting people know that this is going on and we're having this conversation. So I want people to know about that. But let's continue. Talk a little bit about the things that you haven't heard about. And by the way, it's very important that people go out and vote. I mean, it's expected that only 28% of all the young voters out there are going to vote in 2018 in the midterm elections. Last time in 2014 there were midterm elections, 29% of New York State voted. That's 1 in 3 people. Actually, less than 1 in 3 people went out and voted. It's amazing. That means that there were about 4 million people who voted in 2014 in New York State out of 13.5 million people that are available. People aren't showing up. And we've got a governor's race, we've got the lieutenant governor's race, the attorney general's race, we've got various Congress members who are running, including the New York 22nd, which I'm in. That's my district that I'm in. And we're seeing that Claudia Tenney's up for a re-election. And these things are all on the line. When you don't vote, it's very possible. If we see 29% of the people in New York State come out and vote in this midterm election, it's quite possible you're going to see your taxes raised. It's quite possible that you could see, if Democrats take control, that you could see not only that your taxes will go up, but you could also see that illegal aliens are going to have the right to vote, and they're going to take away your right to be able to have a firearm, or they're going to pass a national red flag legislation, which means that not only can they come into your home without telling you about it and take away your firearms, but they can take away your kids. There are ramifications that are immense, and all of this would have to then go to the Supreme Court eventually, 7 years down the line, and then the Supreme Court would decide whether or not that's legal, and your life is already destroyed by that. And that's why the Supreme Court is also very important. Not only that you have to go out and vote to be able to make sure that these are the things that are being told to us. Democrats they want America to be a socialist state. That's what Tom Perez, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, has said in the DNC. He said he wants to make us more like Ocasio-Cortez, which is insane. And he's been very clear that he wants America to be like Ocasio-Cortez, that we're going to limit the freedoms of people that they don't like. Okay, and if we don't vote, that's going to happen. And then that means it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And when it gets to the Supreme Court, who's going to be sitting there looking at the laws to help us? Do we want activist judges, or do we want originalist judges? Judges who look at the actual law and the amendments in the Constitution and say, hey, this is what it's supposed to be. Not, oh, it's not in there, so let me make it up. That difference is immense. Because one of the things like equity, there are people in Citizen Action, which is one of the local fringe Democratic organizations out here in the New York 22nd Central New York. It's called Citizen Action, which is Black Lives Matters, which is Antifa, or they're going by the name of Political Leaders of Tomorrow, PLOT. These people are trying to get elected socialists, individuals who are progressives, who want to go out there and that they want to take away your rights. They want to, if you're white, they want to make sure that you're bottom of the list, that you have no rights, and elevate anyone and everyone that politically is advantage to them into a higher position, into a superior position, and literally put legal racism and separation by law and inflict that on people. And that's horrible. That's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. I don't agree with it. And it's going to be the Supreme Court justices that are going to make that decision about whether or not that happens. And that's why it's so important to make sure we know who's on the Supreme Court. Are these people who have clear minds that make judgments based on law and not their political preferences and creating law? That is absolutely important. So that's why the conversation, and I want to get into it now, about Kavanaugh and about what's going on with Ford is so critical and so important. And so absolutely necessary. By the way, Heather Mecha has also joined us, and I thank you, Heather, for joining in. And please, everybody, if you have questions as we go along, this is why I'm here, so please ask, just like Tina did, and I thank her for that. And share this with other people. Let them know that this is going on. I share it with more people, but I'm talking with you, so I want to make sure that my attention is with you. But why is the Supreme Court so important? We've just established. And that's why this nomination is so insulting and so aggravating, that what we're seeing happening that has never happened before. This has never happened before. Well, we have seen a Supreme Court justice. No Supreme Court justice has ever provided as much documentation as we have seen with Brett Kavanaugh. No one. 500,000 documents. No one's ever done. You could literally add up the prior Supreme Court nominations, add up all the documents they put together, and you would get less documents than Brett Kavanaugh has put out there. And we know that he's done 300 cases, especially at the appellate of the Ninth Court Appellate Division, which is one step below the Supreme Court. And we've seen that he's made monumental decisions that have affected America, and he is well cited and well respected amongst judges and lawyers throughout the entire nation up until 2 weeks ago. And no one has ever questioned his judicial demeanor, his judicial decision-making, and his reasoning. There is no question. Democrats voted for him. That's how he got onto the Ninth Circuit in the first place. The Democrats thought he was good enough and even keel enough and well-spoken and well-understood and well-respected enough to be put onto the Ninth Circuit Court because it's such an important position. And it's considered to be the next step until you can reach, or the step below, the Supreme Court. And Democrats recognized that and recognized that he was qualified for that. That was in 2012. So it's not a question of, is this man qualified? When he was nominated for the Supreme Court, the question wasn't on July 9th. The question was not, is he qualified? It wasn't, because Democrats have already established he is qualified. The judicial system has identified he is qualified. His peers and lawyers and his clerks have all identified he is qualified, which is what the Senate is supposed to be deciding. Is he qualified? And the answer to that is, yes, he is. He is very, very qualified. There is no question that he is qualified. So since we know that, Brett Kavanaugh is qualified. That is not a question. We watched as Democrats spent on, 23 minutes after his name was mentioned. We saw Senator Chuck Schumer come out and say he is going to stop this nomination at all costs. He didn't say because this man is unqualified. He said he's just going to stop it because it was a nomination by President Trump, and he didn't like that. That's it. And July 10th, every member of the Senate Judiciary came out and made comments about how they have to stop this nomination. Not because he's not qualified, because they don't like it. Because they don't like he was nominated by a president that they don't like, and that he has decisions that they don't like. And that because he is not a progressive activist judge, they're upset about that. And they don't want that to happen. They made that clear July 10th, the day after he actually was nominated. So we've already established they're voting against him, and it has nothing to do with his qualifications. It has nothing to do with his decisions. It has everything to do with power, which means this is all from the first day been about politics. This is not about the man. It's not about anything in his decisions. No, it's all about his politics. And they have been spending every minute of every day since July 9th, when he got nominated, 23 minutes after he got nominated, trying to find a way to stop this nomination that isn't based on his actual qualifications and his actual decisions, which is sad and insulting. Because even with Justice Kagan and Justice Sotomayor, while many Republicans did not like their viewpoints and did not like the way that they were going to decide, the defining factor for the Senate is not do you like them or do you like the decisions they make. It's are they qualified? Are they qualified to sit on the Supreme Court and make those decisions? And the answer is yes, they were. Yes, they're very qualified. And you can't take that away from them. They spent a lifetime becoming qualified. And good for them. They are qualified judges. Do I like their decisions? No. Do I like that they're progressives and activists? Absolutely not. But I can't deny the fact that they're qualified. And therefore they earn the right through their actions to be on the Supreme Court. Though whether I would like to see more originalists, or because I would like to see justices that are more in line with the Constitution, that's a personal preference. That's a political preference. But it has nothing to do with them. That's the line that's supposed to be held by the Senate and the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's not about what you like. It's about what's qualified and best for the nation. And when we start getting into the slippery slope of I like this and I don't like that, well, that's when you get into basically compulsion of speech and denial of rights. And now you're compelling people to be what you want. And that's a bias. That's a prejudice. And we're supposed to be, I know Democrats love to say, well, we're beyond that. We got into a post-racial, post-bias, post-prejudice America with the election of Barack Obama. And I'm sorry, no, we didn't. And the exact proof of that is what's going on for the last 2 weeks in the Supreme Court, the Senate Judiciary Committee about the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. Because there is no way, there is nothing. Please, we went through weeks and months of the Senate talking with Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and they found nothing that is an actual disqualifying factor on him based on his cases that he's judged and his qualifications. They found nothing. Nothing. Which is why we see suddenly that at the last minute, out of their back pocket, Senator Dianne Feinstein put out this allegation. And I have to tell you, because I listened to every word of the testimony that happened on Thursday, I was there 10 hours watching C-SPAN to make sure that I wouldn't have any outside influence. I wasn't hearing the opinion of, Fox or CNN or MSNBC. I was listening to C-SPAN. I was hearing just what was being said at that hearing. All I was listening to was that. And what I could find out, and I've read all the public documentation of all the prior investigations that's been going on, everything that was public, directly on what was said by Brett Kavanaugh, what was said by the allegations and the women who've made them, and all the investigating committees. I looked at the facts. And in each of these cases, all I could find is that we have an allegation that has no substance. An allegation that is so thin that no one in their right mind as a prosecutor would ever move it forward. You can't even do a search warrant on this. Why? Because there's no date. There's no time. There's no place. We're not even sure how many people were there. It is as vague gets. Now, that's not to say that I don't believe that Dr. Christine Ford, had something that happened to her in her life that was absolutely traumatic. I'm not saying that didn't happen. In fact, I'm very sure that it probably did. I believe that woman believes she was in a trauma and it happened to her. And I don't doubt that. I will not take that from her. I believe that she has that belief. Belief is not fact. Belief does not mean something is true. It is a belief. That's all she has. And that's all she is presented. She believes it. Now, whether that's true or not is another question. Again, I'm giving her the benefit of doubt, saying that what she believes is true. Because I have no way of doubting it. I have no way of saying that's not true. That doesn't mean and rather I should say, that it's true that she had something that happened to her, but that in no way means that this is accurate about Brett Kavanaugh, because that is not substantiated. There's nothing there. Now, before I even go further, Tina DeBella mentions, I'm just listening to you on this as I am so disgusted and appalled at the BS with this hearing. So without any corroboration or actual memory of events, when, where, how she got there, or who she went with, you can destroy a man. And Tina, at this moment, the answer is yes. Yes, you can. And we've seen it done. And we've seen the major news media go out of their way to help make this happen. Yes, you can destroy someone's life and everything they've ever done because someone else didn't like their political preference. Yes, you can. And there's a lot of questions here. I mean, there are legitimate questions about this allegation against Brett Kavanaugh that we have to say. And again, I'm not saying something didn't happen to Dr. Ford. That's never been in question. What is in question is, was Brett Kavanaugh the person involved? And what we know for a fact, here are some of the facts in the timeline. We know that Dr. Ford was about 15, we assume, because she doesn't have a date. We don't know how old she was. We don't know how old Brett Kavanaugh was. We don't know where Brett Kavanaugh lived at, where she lived at. We have no way of knowing. But we can assume, and she has made it generally known, although she's had 3 different versions of this, one being in the late 80s, one being in the mid 80s, and then coming down to 1982. And when she was asked, how did she figure out that this is her testimony in the hearing, how did you know it was 1982? Well, generally, that's what I believe is correct. So you have no idea. She has no idea. We have no way of knowing. It could be 1981. It could be 1984. It could be almost anything. It could be 1990. We have no idea. Which again goes to, I'm not saying that something like this didn't happen to her. I just don't know that it happened to Brett. Because there's nothing that confirms that. So she's guessing at 1982, which doesn't validate anything. And that is not called corroboration. So she's assumed that date. And so we must go with that date. And in 1982, when she was 15 and Brett Kavanaugh was 17, they didn't go to the same high schools. They didn't know, the majority of their friends were not the same. They didn't, according to testimony that was given, they didn't go in the same circles. Apparently, based on the testimony, and it was not, and that left a lot to be desired, but according to the testimony, that was the only time she has ever met Brett Kavanaugh. If we are to believe her, she never had met him prior, and she didn't meet him after. That was the only time in her life she had ever met Brett Kavanaugh, at 17, and in this traumatic event, as she alleges. So how she would know it was Brett Kavanaugh, I'm not quite sure, and how she could identify him 37, 38 years, 36 years later is unclear. But this is what she has alleged. And again, that would not stand up in a court of law. That would not be considered enough proof for anything in our judicial system. No one could be destroyed or should be destroyed for something that is not clear enough to even give us a general idea of the time frame. And that, how would you know this person? We don't know. So that's very upsetting. We have a couple of questions that come up. So we know we don't know how she got there to a location 20 minutes away from her home, and she did not drive at 15. And we don't know how she got back home from there. We don't know whether she arrived before or after Brett Kavanaugh and another man who was alleged to be involved, Mark Judge. We have no idea. She doesn't know. She does admit that she had drank at the event, and she says that she only had 1 beer. Okay, again, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. She only had 1. Maybe she had many more. She's not giving us details. Who supplied the beer? How do we know? When did she start drinking? Did she drink before she got to the event? Do we know that? Did she drink after she got to the event? which would be part of how did she get there and where was she going? Where was she going and where did she go to after the event? What was happening? Where are the details? We have none of these details, so we don't know. But that's what she alleges, that she had a beer, that there wasn't, and this incident occurred. It leaves questions. Skipping ahead quite a bit. When she decided to move this forward, she admitted in her testimony on C-SPAN, live, that she was advised by, quote, beach friends, quote, that advised her on how to go forward with this allegation. Who are these people? She never mentioned. She never named them. She didn't describe them. She's described and named a host of other people. People who were at the event, this alleged event, people that she went to school with. She's alleged a lot of names and people, but she very carefully omitted, and when asked about it, mentioned more than once, beach friends. Who are these beach friends that told her which lawyer to get, which told her to make submissions to the press, who told her how to go forward with this entire process? Who are these beach friends? Are they Democrats? Are they members of Congress? Are they members of the Democratic Party, as she is? Are they members of radical organizations like Black Lives Matter or Antifa or political leaders of tomorrow? Who are these people? It is a question. It is a question because this is considered and has come about in a manner that is purely political. We need to know the answer to that, because whether they are or are not answers part of the question of what's the motivation for her to do this after 36 years. Why is she coming out now? And we have to ask that question because of the manner in which this was presented to the public. It was hidden. No one got to know about this until the last moment, which only serves the only reason why you would wait until the very last moment to present this is a political action. There is no other excuse for it. It is political. You don't wait 6 weeks to say that there is an allegation, a serious and significant allegation against this person's character, a sexual assault, and you don't present that until the last minute. Well, that's only because you're looking for a headline. Quite honestly. Because if you're standing up for women at that moment, well, the first thing you do to protect the women is you go and you make that known immediately. Because Republicans, whether they want to or not, because of the system in the Senate and the Senate Judiciary, must take action. They don't have a choice on that. And Brett Kavanaugh must answer the questions about that. He doesn't have a choice on that. It's an allegation. And how do I know this to be true? How can you be sure of this? Because that is the exact system that is built into the Senate Judiciary, and that is exactly what happens with judges at lower courts that are approved by the Senate. Happens every day, has been happening for decades. It is part of the system. It happened to Clarence Thomas. It is a requirement. So you can't say, well, the Republicans were trying to hold this off and they wouldn't be able to get it through, so they wanted to wait until they knew they could get the most attention to it. No. And if you're looking to protect women, which is the answer that we get, why is this being done in this way? Well, it protects women. It helps women. No, it does not. This is a use. You're using women for a political gain. You're using a tragedy for a political gain. You're destroying lives and families for a political gain. But this is in no way, shape, or form for women. Let's not lie to ourselves. Let's not kid ourselves. Let's not play a game about this. The honest answer is, if you wanted to do something for women and to stand up for this specific woman, Dr. Christine Ford, then you make that known the moment you get the notification in July. But that wasn't done. And it gets even worse. Because let's really look at that. Because I think that answers a lot of the questions that come out afterwards and must be answered if we're looking at this honestly. Okay, so we know that, as I mentioned in the timeline, so Dr. Christine Ford does not meet and speak with Mr. Kavanaugh again, ever. And then 37 years after he's already worked for the very publicly known, has worked for the Bush administration, even after he gets put onto the Ninth Appellate Court, the second step just below the Supreme Court, very publicly, she decides when he becomes nominee on July 9th, on July 30th, after speaking with an unknown group and an unknown number of beach friends, whomever they may be, and whatever their motivations may be, she then writes this letter and sends it out. Okay. And then we know that on July 30th, that's when Senator Dianne Feinstein gets this letter. And Dianne Feinstein's immediate reaction is to do nothing. And then she contacts, about a week later, she contacts Miss Ford, who has requested for anonymity in this. She does not want her name out. Although, and she wants to make this known, but she does not want her name out. Okay, we'll go with that. And I can respect that. A lot of women who've been through these kind of traumas want to be anonymous, although they want to protect other women, which is fine, and I respect that. Although I would expect that somewhere in the last 36 years, given the high-profile positions he's had, you would have done that beforehand, since he's been able to affect women's lives for decades. And I won't get into, and that brings up the question of his character with women throughout the rest of his life, which, as far as we can tell, from 65 women who've known him since he was in high school, all of his law clerks, that's about 48 women, all of the firms that he's worked with in the Bush administration, every woman in Yale, and his time in Yale, all the women say that this is not his character, but that's fine. Let's go forward with this. So what does Dianne Feinstein do? She speaks with Dr. Christine Ford. She tells Dr. Ford to get in touch with an activist lawyer, and who she knows, who is a very outspoken anti-Trump, progressive activist lawyer. So she advises her on legal counsel who will promote a political agenda, and then doesn't tell anyone else. She doesn't tell anyone else. How is this helping that woman? She gave her a lawyer who has a political motivation, and whose agenda is that political motivation to fight against President Trump, and then tells no one about it, and sits on it for 6 weeks. How does this help that woman? How does it help that woman, Dr. Ford's goal of protecting other women? If that is what is genuinely being done, how are you protecting other women or moving forward her concern by not doing anything, not telling anyone, and hiding it from the very system that is built to be able to address that very same concern, and to make sure that it is answered and investigated and everything is done properly and cannot be stopped by Republicans? And still, the only thing that wouldn't have happened, the big difference, it wouldn't have gotten news media attention. That's it. But the questions would have been asked and investigated, and there would have been a major investigation on this. Possibly even the allegation privately through the system would have come out, and he would have withdrawn, very likely. It's quite possible. But given that that didn't happen, we can't say that they're helping women, because none of this is a benefit to anyone. You can't say that. So what's the very next thing that happens? While Senator Dianne Feinstein is holding on to this, there are, as we know from the testimony, as shown live on C-SPAN, what we know for a fact is that Dr. Ford had a copy of the letter and didn't give it to anyone. She says her lawyers did not give it to anyone. The only other two people who had a copy of this are her congresswoman and obviously her staff, and also Dianne Feinstein and her staff. And that's it. And somehow, amongst those three groups of people, suddenly the letter gets put out. And we know that, as according to the testimony under oath, on penalty of perjury, Dr. Ford says she did not do it. And her lawyers did not do it. Because, by the way, if the lawyers did do it, that would have been against the wishes of her client and also against the benefit of her client, because it reveals her name when she did not want to be revealed, which means her lawyers would be liable. They would be disbarred, and they would be liable for lawsuit because of that violation. So let's say her lawyers didn't do it. That leaves us with politicians. And the only politician who seems to have a motive is the very politician who's holding on to this idea because it's political and there's a political advantage to be had with this. What makes more sense? That somehow Dr. Ford, who wants to be silent, sent this letter out and leaked it to the press so that her name could be revealed and she could go through hell, or that Senator Dianne Feinstein or her staff leaked the information so that they can make a bigger issue of this when they reveal it at the last moment, because now it gets the public attention and media and the political circus that they want to be able to delay or potentially stop this nomination that they promised they were going to stop on July 9th, 23 minutes after the nomination was mentioned. So this is very troubling for us all. And I think we can all see how this isn't helping anyone. Anyone is being helped by this at any point. There is no woman's issue that is being advanced here. There is no benefit. There is a political benefit that's going on. It is the promise being kept of the Senate Democrats 23 minutes after the name of the nomination was made. By the way, you can look back on it in Twitter and on Facebook, on Twitter for Senator Gillibrand, for Senator Chuck Schumer, and many others. Back on July 9th, they started saying, actually before July 9th, they were out there saying that they were going to stop the nominee of President Trump, no matter who it was. They were already making allegations of how whomever the nominee would be would defeat and roll back and step on any of the political agendas of the progressive liberals and socialists in the Democratic Party. They made these statements without ever knowing who in the world was going to be the nominee. Look back on it. You'll be able to see it in their Twitter feeds. You'll be able to see it in the news and in their interviews. They were already making allegations of how someone who they didn't know who it would be was somehow going to destroy the progressive agenda that had been built up over so many years. And then once they didn't know who it was, they then continued to make those claims and just attached the name Brett Kavanaugh to it. They had no idea, and they didn't care. And so we see that in the way that Dianne Feinstein moved forward with this at the very last minute to maximize the exposure of Dr. Ford against her wishes and to draw as much public attention to this issue to create a bottleneck and to slow down and stop this process as much as possible. Because there was absolutely nothing in his record and absolutely nothing in his cases that would justify stopping his moving forward, because he was qualified and capable and it was proven. I have to ask a question about this. And I'm being as fair as I can. We have to ask a question. When we look at this and we say, okay, when this process started and she got her name out, and her name has been leaked by Democrats, and we see that she's getting this attention and everyone's focused on it, and she wants to, what did the Democrats decide just before they released her name that they thought that was important? That her lawyers who want to be able to promote this because it's a part of their political agenda, they go out and they say, you know what, one of the best things we can do right now is, even though no one knows who you are, they don't know your name, they know nothing about you, let's get a polygraph. Why would you need a polygraph if your name is never going to be released? If you're never going to be put in front of the Senate, if you're never going to be spoken about because you are anonymous, your name is confidential, and it's supposed to be handled in a confidential manner, why would you need a polygraph? That's a question. And it's a question to her lawyers who suggested and paid for the polygraph. Why would you need that? Why would that be in your legal plan to protect your client by saying, well, let's get a polygraph. And then the circumstances that polygraph is done under is in the middle of a funeral, in the middle of a airline trip, you're going to have the polygraph done in a non-clinical site. Now, besides the fact that polygraphs are not acceptable in courts, they are not considered legally reliable, and they are not in and of themselves anything that can be used. It is part of a process, but it is not considered by itself a defining fact because they are unreliable. All they say is that at that moment, someone is emotionally in belief of whatever they said. But I go back to again, belief is not fact. Belief is not truth. We all know that. But okay, so let's go with it. So they have this in the middle of the night, apparently, at a hotel, as she's dealing with a funeral and about to get onto a plane. I'm sorry, that's not credible. That is an emotional turmoil, and anything you say in that emotional turmoil is suspect. When my father died, you could have asked me anything in the world, and I wouldn't know if it was true or not, and I'm pretty sure the polygraph would be unable to tell whether I was lying or telling the truth. I was dealing with the death of my father and traveling, and that's just me on just two things. She had this event that's been troubling her for her life for almost 4 decades, according to her description. And you're telling me that all of that mixed together, and she's able to make a very clear emotional statement about what she does and does not believe? With only 2 questions. Only 2 questions asked. How do you know that's invalid? You throw the polygraph out. It's not conclusive. It can't be. And again, we're looking at, and the reason why we have to ask that question is both, again, one, this has been very political, and it doesn't make sense why an attorney protecting their client would do this. And 2, we have to ask this question because it doesn't make sense. The nature in which it is done is improbable and not conclusive. And since we are talking about the destruction of someone's life, and in this case, 2 people's lives, Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh, when we're looking at destroying their lives, their political careers, their personal careers, and the ability of someone to be nominated and put onto the Supreme Court, yes, we have to ask all these questions because they are critical questions. We have to understand this because so many lives are affected and the nation is affected. So we have to ask this. And it wasn't. But it was her testimony, and it's a question. It's something that we have to say, how can you say that? So we have to bring that up. And we have to evaluate this because in fairness to her, if it is conclusive, then we know that corroborates or gives more corroboration to what she said. But if it doesn't, well, we have to, again, that doesn't mean we throw it out with the bathwater and say, well, we still believe her anyway. No, you have to say, well, there is a question. And this is something that is significant, so we have to be sure. But we don't get that. We don't know. And that doesn't make any sense. How can we say and do these things? How can we destroy someone's life? How can we affect the Supreme Court without knowing? In any other case of law, this case would have already been thrown out. Not because she doesn't believe what she says, but because there is no proof of what she says. There is no way to corroborate what she says. There is nothing that gives there is no there. And that is essential to be able to destroy someone's life because the burden of proof is on the accuser, not the accused. That is the American system of law. That is due process. The burden of proof is supposed to be on the accuser and not the accused. But we are seeing that change in our nation. And it's not just based on gender, and it's not just based on sex or actually race, but it's also based in everything else. We're seeing that with the red flag legislation, where the accused has the burden of proof to prove they are innocent and try and get back their property and their children because an accuser said so. That's the red flag legislation. It's the same thing we're dealing with here. And we're seeing that pass. It's been passed in 6 states. It's about to pass in New York State unless we can stop it, which I want to. But we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing that progressive politics is going out there and changing the very fundamental basis of our legal system and saying that the accused has the burden of proof if they happen to be white or male or Republican or conservative. Suddenly, the burden of proof is on the accused and not the accuser, which is wrong and violates our principles as a nation at its core, because that is what is going on. And we have to address that. We have to recognize that. We have changed the legal system. You are now guilty by accusation. Accusation equals guilt. Not innocent until proven guilty. Accusation equals guilt. I said the same thing when Senator Al Franken, when he was being accused, I said the same thing about him. Accusation does not equal guilt. If this is a problem and charges can be made, make those charges legally, put it through the legal system. If he is proven guilty, throw the book at him. Absolutely. Punish him as much as he can, because we should not allow sexual predators to get away with anything, and they should be brought into the legal system, and they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But that doesn't mean that accusation equals guilt. If I said that, and I believe Senator Gillibrand is about my age, and if I decided to say, well, Senator Gillibrand, I've been at political events, she's been at political events. Very often, I'm sure I may have covered her at some event, and after the event, she was out in a bar, and I happened to be in the bar. We had drinks. She ran up on me and felt me up. And I'm just giving you an example. That's absolutely ludicrous. It makes no sense whatsoever. What if I say that? Does my accusation mean that she is guilty? No, because that's ridiculous, Mike. It makes no sense. When did it happen? I don't know. At some political event that I was covering, because I am a member of the press and I do go to political events. And I was at one of the political events that she happened to be at in the Broome County, Central New York region. But I don't remember what day. Where did it happen, Mike? I'm not sure. Somewhere in Central New York at an event that I was covering, and I cover many. And one that she happened to be at. Where did this take place? Well, it happened in a bar. It happened in the back room of a bar, and she ran up on me. Does this not sound very familiar? I'm not naming a place. I'm not naming a time. I'm not telling you how I got there or how I got back. It's credible in the sense that we could be in the same location at the same time based on the work that we do. And we're at the right age that I wouldn't stick out in that crowd. So that is potentially possible, but it has no credibility because I can't tell you when it happened, how it happened, where it happened. It's just something I've made up, and I'm making it up right now. But according to the rules that we are setting forth right now, she would be guilty and would have to prove beyond a shadow of doubt that I was incorrect, rather than I would need to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that I am correct. That's the problem with what's going on right now. And that is dangerous. That is dangerous to women. That is dangerous to minorities. That is dangerous to any and everyone in America. And remember, this same standard is what is applied to businesses everywhere. So when people say, well, it's just for a job interview. No, that's crap. That's not true. This applies to the same principles that are applied here are being applied to small business and in contracts and in interpersonal reactions and relations throughout the entire nation. This affects everything. Everything. And they're all connected. So we have to say to ourselves, if that standard is accusation equals guilt, and we've seen this play out over and over again under the Me Too movement, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but please understand that it means that my allegation, my example of an allegation against Senator Gillibrand is valid. unless, but the problem there is I'm a male and I'm a Republican. So, I guess that means that it's invalid because of my sex and my political affiliation, which are absolutely stupid reasons for anything to be considered valid or not valid. And I'm not using that standard against Dr. Ford. I'm looking at her criteria of what she has said and what she has not said, and whether or not there is evidence and validation in that. But if the criteria is where my personal sex, which is defined by birth, and I don't care what people say about trans, you're defined by birth. My genetics are male. And my political preference, which is a choice, is a Republican. Would it make a difference then if I were a libertarian or a conservative? What if I happen to be a progressive? Would that make the difference? Can we get any more arbitrary than that? That's why I'm so scared about this and why it's so important, because this deals with the Supreme Court and it affects everyone. Now, Tina jumped in and she mentions, and I thank you for this because that's why I'm here, to have the conversation with you and have your thoughts and hear what you have to say about this. Tina mentions, it's all part of the man-hate movement to eliminate anything regarding males. It's disgusting. As far as they are concerned, women never lie, and men always lie and are evil. Well, Tina, yeah, a lot of that is true. Matter of fact, it was Senator Hirono who said that men should shut up and just get with it. I think that's maybe paraphrasing a bit there. But basically that men have to shut up, that we don't have a voice because I was born a male. Does that mean that transsexuals who either become male or a male who becomes a woman, does that mean they have to shut up too? Since we're playing the game of micro categories of people, since we're categorizing people into these amorphous groups, these arbitrary groups, does that mean that a trans male, woman who becomes a man or a man who becomes a woman, in either of those cases, do they have to shut up too? Should they not be believed? Who else doesn't get to be believed? Because men are evil and women are always correct. Well, then, when we listen and bring it back to the Supreme Court, talking about Kavanaugh, talking about Dr. Ford, when Dr. Ford's best friend, Leland, she has said, under penalty of perjury, which means jail, if she lied, she said she doesn't know who Brett Kavanaugh is, never met him, and he was never at the event. She doesn't know of any event that this is talking about. This never occurred. She said that under penalty of perjury. She's a woman. According to Senator Hirono, I must believe her no matter what. Well, I have one woman who's telling me it didn't happen. I have another woman who's telling me it did happen. Who am I supposed to believe, Senator Hirono? How am I supposed to resolve that? I have hundreds, literally hundreds of women who know Brett Kavanaugh. And I'm not going to say, because I'm not saying that there aren't women who say they believe Dr. Ford. Sure they do. Except they don't know one Brett Kavanaugh, were not involved in his life for decades, and did not work with him. So the women who did know him throughout his life, who have worked with him for decades, have come out and said that. Am I supposed to take those 200 women and I'm supposed to believe them implicitly, without question? So does that mean that I have 200 some odd women who say they don't believe this, and I have one woman who does? Well, Senator Hirono, who am I supposed to believe? Now you're pitting people against each other based on their sex. How is that not sexist? How is that not sexism? We're judging people based on a biological birth. That's insane. And I've heard people talking about this because, well, he's a rich white man. Where does his economics come into this? Guess what? Dr. Ford is a rich white woman. So what has the economics got to do with it? Everybody they know are rich people. Where does the economics come into this? It's absolutely meaningless and irrelevant. And if anything, it's prejudicial to say, well, they have a different economic class. They all have the same economic class. Throw that out. And if someone's telling you that, That's because they don't have an argument or anything to discuss, and they're just trying to play your emotions. Throw that out. And if someone tells you that, well, it's because he's white, I'm sorry, throw that out. Again, that's racial. That is directly racism. Throw that out. They're all white people. It has no relevance. And the fact that someone is rich or whatever color, if they're rich or poor, if they're white or black or Chinese or polka dot, how does that have anything to do with whether or not they committed a rape or a sexual assault? How does that have any fact in that? It has nothing to do with it, because anyone of any sex, of any race, of any religion, of any economic standpoint can commit a sexual assault. Throw that out. If someone's saying that to you, they don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they're doing that to get an emotional rise out of you, and throw it out because it's useless. And if anything, that person is the very ism that they are trying to promote. They are either racist or sexist. They have some kind of equality issue, and they have a problem. And I wouldn't trust that person very much in that discussion, because they don't know what they're talking about. So I want to be very clear about that. Now, I do see, and I just wanted to finish that thought before I got to, Tina did mention a statement to me, and I want to read that off, and bear with me as I look at that so I can be able to answer it a little bit more clearly, because I'm here again for you. I'm here to have this discussion for the public, because maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think I don't know what I'm talking about, and that's okay. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me what I'm missing. Let's have that discussion. Let's see, because if we're missing something, we should discuss it. We should make sure, because people's lives are lying on the line. The impact to our nation will be indelible for decades. So we need to have this conversation, and we need to make sure that we all agree. And if we don't, well, then we need to make sure that we're not talking about it. Stop it. Sorry, that was my puppy doing something bad. Bad, go. Sorry about that. So Tina mentions, after it came out the college rape accusation was a lie, Senator Gillibrand stated that we should always stand behind a woman who claims rape, even if she lies. Well, I didn't hear that last part. She said that even if she lies. See, and that's a problem. Even if you can stand there and say that even if we know this is a fallacy, which, by the way, violates the First Amendment. The First Amendment applies, you can say anything that you want as long as you do not harm an individual and it is not a proven fallacy, that you are spreading a lie, because that actually harms individuals. So for her to say that says she has absolutely no respect for the First Amendment. I don't know that quote. I don't know that Senator Gillibrand has said it. I have no doubt that you're correct, Tina. I just don't know it myself. But I can tell you that if that is correct, and she said it in that way, that even if a woman lies, she still must be believed in an accusation of a crime against someone, then guess what? You don't respect the First Amendment. You're violating it. You actually don't even know what it means. And that is a troubling and problematic thing. By the way, Senator Gillibrand is up for re-election. Keep that in mind as you vote, because these people are affecting our laws and how those laws are being implemented. And they're going to affect your life. Especially right now, if you happen to be a man, you happen to be white, or you happen to be a Republican or a conservative, God help you if you have to have any money, then these are the people, they're coming after you. That's what they've made very clear. They've made it very, very clear. So think about that. But also I would like to mention that David Forster has been listening in. He's commented, and I want to thank you for being involved in listening in. And David says, these issues are created by progressives' desire to be smarter than God. Well, many of them don't believe in God. So there is some credence to that. And it's a shame. But we do know that one of the people who does believe in God is the daughter of Dr. Kavanaugh. And I would only say, if you believe in God and you believe that many of the progressives, the political leaders of tomorrow, Citizen Action, members of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, that they don't believe in God and that that's a problem, pray for them. It's one of the best things you can do for them. And it's one of only few things, because we can't compel them to believe this. And that's what this is all about. This is about compulsion. We must believe Dr. Ford, because she said so. Because she believes it. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. She believes it. So we have to automatically believe that. And the accused, against every principle of our nation, must have this overwhelming burden of proof of something that he cannot. How's he supposed to prove himself innocent? We have absolutely no idea what year this happened in. We don't know where it happened in. We don't know when it happened. We're not sure who was there and who wasn't there. We have no idea. How am I supposed to prove? How does anyone prove that? As going back to my example against Senator Gillibrand, if I said that she committed a sexual assault against me in a bar after a political event, how is she supposed to be able to defend against that? I haven't said anything there. I've made an allegation of a sexual assault. I'm not telling her where it happened. I'm not telling her when it happened. I'm not telling you who's around when it happened. How's she supposed to defend against that? You can't. You could destroy anyone's life. And I mean, I'm only using that as an example. I could use the example against the man too. I could say Anthony Brindisi did the same thing. Or that they both did it to me at the same time. I mean, if I said Anthony Brindisi, Assemblyman Anthony Brindisi, who happens to be running for the 22nd District as a Democrat, and I said if he's joined by Senator Gillibrand, who's also up for re-election, and they're both I'm sorry if my phone's been ringing and I can't hear it, and I thought I did turn it off, so I apologize if it's ringing right now. But if I say that both Senator Gillibrand and Anthony Brindisi in a bar after a political event that I had covered sexually assaulted me, how are they supposed to defend themselves against that? How? And should they not be believed because Anthony Brindisi is a man and I happen to be black and I don't have as much money as either of them? According to the system that we're being told that we should believe in, because I'm black, well, that means that Anthony Brindisi can't be believed. Because I'm poor, neither of them can be believed. Is that ridiculous? That's the danger of the system that we're creating right now. And it destroys people's lives. And that none of that is correct and none of that is true. But I want to make sure that people understand that's how ridiculous it is right now. That's what we're saying is the system going forward. No one could run for political office under that. No one would want to run a business under that. Anyone could be destroyed at any moment over nothing. I'm a political figure, and God help me, at any moment now, someone's going to get on Facebook and make an accusation against me, and my life will be destroyed. And I'll have no way to defend against it. That could happen to your son, your father, your husband, your nephew, your niece. It can happen to anyone at this moment, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. That is absolutely terrifying. David made another comment. David says, you cannot get in agreement with progressives without being in submission to progressives. They despise our very existence. Well, I would say that they're, according to the philosophy of the progressive mindset as it stands in America right now, which would be defined by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which would be defined by Bernie Sanders, which would be defined by the Democratic National Committee Chairman Tom Perez. What we're saying is, yes, progressives believe in the thought, and we saw this with, again, Senator Hirono, that only certain people are permitted to speak, and they're only correct when they say exactly what the progressives want to be said. And there's a big difference there. So it doesn't matter what you believe. You have to believe what they believe. Otherwise, it's wrong. Or that you have made a microaggression against someone. And I'm sure my conversation is filled with microaggressions, and I could care less. Because we're thick-skinned and we're adults. And we're individuals and we think. And sometimes to have a conversation, to have a deep thought, to evaluate critical and important issues, you're going to say things that someone won't like. Live with it. Deal with it. You're not compelled to listen to me. You're not compelled to agree with me. And God help us, you shouldn't be. If you feel like you're being compelled to hear what I have to say, stop listening, go away, go somewhere else. If someone is compelling you to do this, unless it's your job, because I know there's several Democrats who actually have a job of listening to me. That is part of their job description. They work for Citizen Action, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, political leaders of tomorrow, Anthony Brindisi, the Democratic Party. They listen because I'm a political commentator. So they listen, and they have paid individuals who listen. And I see when you guys actually hit my sites and check out what's going on. So fine. But I mean, that's their job. If you're being compelled as an individual, God help you know, tell someone about it. That's wrong. It's against your First Amendment right. And do not let them do that. Go somewhere else. But if you're choosing to listen to me by your own free choice and you don't like it, well, that's your own fault. And David mentions you and me both, my brother. Yeah, I mean, hey, it's compelled. You shouldn't be compelled, but if you choose to, that's fantastic. And if you don't like it, well, that's not a microaggression. That's just something you don't like. Deal with it. I don't have to like it. I listen to all kinds of stuff. It doesn't mean I like it. But also, I should say, I do have some progressives. I'll even give a shout out to Earl Walker, a gentleman who is part of Citizen Action, who I do have conversations with, who I do enjoy talking with. I do know Democrats, including the county executive Jason Garnar and Assemblywoman Donald Pardo, who I enjoy having conversations with. Do we agree? No, not at all. But we have conversations, and we discuss the issues, and we talk about the issues, and we don't like necessarily the things that get discussed or where everyone agrees, but we have the conversation. And that's both privately and professionally. I've had these conversations with them. And no, we don't always agree. And that's okay. Another one, Councilwoman Danny Krantz. I've had conversations with her. She's a Democrat. We don't always agree. But that's okay. We don't have to. And we don't necessarily like all the conversations we get into. But that's okay. We don't have to. But we have them anyway. But let me bring in, and again, if we're going by the rules that are being set up by the discussion of Kagan versus Ford in the Senate, then that's no longer an option. We are being told by senators, individuals who are creating laws and ensuring that we have Supreme Court justices that will back up these laws, that they are trying to find individuals who will agree that you don't have that First Amendment right to not be compelled to listen to something, that you don't have a right to speak out, that you don't have a right to say, I don't agree. They're taking that away from you, because that is exactly what Senator Hirono has said very, very publicly. When she says men should shut up, she's saying that men don't have a right to have their voice heard, period, on anything, especially if a woman is on the other end of that conversation. How dare you, Senator Hirono? How dare the rest of the senators in your party agree with that sentiment and try and promote that? That is, by definition, that's an authoritarian type of statement. That's a totalitarian mindset, which also happens to be socialism, which is a lighter form of communism. That's what we're facing in this 2018 election. If no one's made that connection for you, that's what this is all about. This is, and again, as I said at the beginning, this is all political. The way it has been handled, what has been said and done, every step of everything, every conversation, every argument, every delay that is going on. This is all about the politics. It's about optics. It's about trying to change that, since we know that roughly somewhere between 29 and 32% of all voters in New York State, and roughly about 4 out of 10 voters in the nation are going to come out and vote in the 2018 midterm elections. What they're looking to do is try and emotionally capture those individuals to make a decision in their favor, regardless of what facts may be out there, so that they can control who's going to be able to make the laws and who's going to be able to approve the laws in the Supreme Court and be able to take away your rights. That is what the fight is about. You may not love Republicans, you may not love conservatives, but guess what? Republicans and conservatives are not trying to take away your ability to speak, to be able to say what you believe, to disagree with them, and to live your life. But that is exactly what the Democratic Party at this moment is trying to say. Some people deserve to be heard and others don't. Some people are required, should be required to have a better life than others. And certain people are more important than others. My God, how many isms are in that? When you're categorizing people and quantifying and, more importantly, prioritizing people based on political agendas, that is dangerous. And that is totalitarianism. And that is what we're seeing in the Senate at this moment. Think about something else in this thing. And again, I've never said, and I don't want any woman, before I say anything else, I want every woman to understand, if a sexual predator has come up to you and you've been assaulted, bring that person, go to the courts, make your case, prosecute that individual. That is your right, and that, more importantly, that's what should happen, and no one would question that. You will be supported, and that's important, and we have to make that very, very clear. But when I see what's going on, that's not the case. I mean, let me ask a question that also should be asked about this case. In the state of Maryland, there is no statute of limitations on sexual assault. None. So 37 years later, or 36 years later, or since we don't know what the time frame is, generally somewhere between 3 and 4 decades after the fact, why has Dr. Ford not gone to Maryland, Montgomery County in particular, and filed charges? By the way, she hasn't, in case anyone didn't know that. The statute of limitations is unlimited. She can go into, and could have, over the last 6 weeks, at any point, including today, she could go into Montgomery County, go up to the police and say, I want to press charges against Brett Kavanaugh for sexual assault. And the police would have to move forward. And they would start an investigation. And they would have to try, and that's what the process would normally be. So she could, at any moment, do this. Why hasn't she? I don't know. Maybe because her lawyers would mention to her that she doesn't have a case. Because the first thing the police would say is, okay, great, we are more than willing to go forward with this, as they would for any woman or any individual who's gotten a sexual assault. And the first thing they're going to ask is, when did it happen? Second question they're going to ask is, where did it happen? Then they're going to ask, who was involved, and are there any witnesses? And we've already established very, very clearly, and she has established over and over again, that we don't have answers to any of those things. We don't even know what was going on in the room. You know, one of the questions I would have loved to hear, and again, this is to add credibility to her claim. I want her to answer this because I want us to credibly be able to understand where she stands. And I would love to hear Dr. Ford say, what type of door was it that she closed? When she ran into the bathroom and closed the door, what kind of door was it? It's a good question, right? Was it wooden? Was it metal? Why? Because that tells me that she was there. That gives us an idea of where the room is. It also helps us figure out, where was that room? Where was that house? What kind of houses had that kind of door at that time, to help us get a timeline so we can verify and validate her claim, so that we can believe it and say, okay, if that is the case, and we can now track this. Hey, maybe Kavanaugh doesn't deserve to be nominated. Maybe he needs to be criminally prosecuted. Give us something, but she doesn't. She doesn't mention any of those things. She doesn't mention what kind of music was playing. She doesn't mention what kind of fabric there was, whether it was carpet on the floor or not. What kind of bed was it? What kind of door did she have to shut? Anything that was in the room. Things that would give us some way of saying, okay, this is, and I've read her statement, it mentions none of these things. When she spoke on C-SPAN, she mentioned none of these things. These are all things that would give us some way of being able to give a timeline, to be able to try and track a location, to give substance to her claim, and to validate it and achieve the goal that she says she wants, that we know that the Senate Democrats have said that they want. And the fact that they're not providing that and not trying to provide that means they're not trying to validate what she says. it means to me that they don't believe and don't care about Dr. Ford. Otherwise, they would ask that question and let her answer that question and give that validation and remove that question. And if they remove that question, then they get the goal that they want, and that's to keep Brett Kavanaugh off the Supreme Court. They validate their reason why they're telling everyone you must believe the woman. But they're not doing that. That's not what they're doing. Which means to me that because they're not doing the simple things, the critical things that help add to the credibility of this woman, they don't care. They're using her. This is all about the politics. They could care less. As long as this takes more time, then it doesn't matter. And I understand, and they're getting exactly what they want. I mean, we just saw Senator Flake. He's now pushed it back another week. What do you think is going to be learned in that week? Because I can tell you, based on what we've been told so far and the way it's gone so far, we're not going to learn anything. We're not going to get any new information. There is no new information to be gotten. The FBI can't go back to a house and figure out where it was because there is no house. They can't tell us what year it was and verify the year and therefore verify whether people were or were not present because we don't know what that is. They can't verify who was in the room because we don't know. Although there's this fifth person that has now been added into the story, according to the testimony of Dr. Ford on C-SPAN, there's a fifth person who may be able to validate this. She says she doesn't want to mention that person's name. She doesn't want them involved. Wait a minute, how can you say that? She has told us there is a fifth male, or fifth person who is in there, who happens to be a male, and that person was at this party in this house, and that person therefore could validate this, and she has refused to mention that person's name. And she's the only one who knows, because her best friend Leland doesn't know about this event and says it didn't happen. Mark Judge has said he doesn't know about this event, and he doesn't, and he says it doesn't happen, and he's refuted that. We know that Brett Kavanaugh said he's never been at this location. He has no idea what she's talking about. So there's this other person who is supposed to be there, and according to her testimony on C-SPAN, there's another person, another male, who is there, who therefore could validate whether or not she's actually there, and she won't tell anyone who that is. I'm sorry, then it sounds like you're hiding something. And again, it goes to, and her lawyers would have asked her about this, I imagine. And since her lawyers were personally, directly told she was supposed to get in touch with them because of Senator Dianne Feinstein, that makes this whole thing one big political trap. And Democrats don't want it to sound like that, and they're hiding this as best they can. They are seriously trying to avoid any mention of this being political, and they don't want to talk about how they are politically using a woman who is alleged rape for their political gain. That woman, that the political party, the Democrats, are doing everything. Well, then why don't they answer these simple questions? And here's Tina. Tina DeBella says, here is an article where that mattress, quote, mattress girl, quote, rape claim was proven to be false. Gillibrand, Senator Gillibrand, said this girl should be beyond criticism and believed. And she provides and if you go on to Facebook, and I'll include it in so if you go on to Facebook Live right now, you'll be able to see this. And I'll also include it when I repost this on the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. And you'll be able to see the link and be able to read the article itself directly. Because I always like to provide people with direct information so you know exactly what's going on. So I thank you for that, Tina. And that's, again, if we're hearing Senator Gillibrand say that, then she has absolutely no idea what the First Amendment is, has no idea what the First Amendment does, and is absolutely insane. Okay? But let's look at it. And Jeff Flake and I was going off to Jeff Flake, Senator Jeff Flake has gone, and he's extended this. And in this extension, we're going to get nothing other than what we have, unless that additional person that has been unnamed gets named. unless they are able to find out who these, quote, beach friends are, and able to speak about who these beach friends are, and tell us whether that was politically motivated and whether they had any political connection in this. This is all about politics, folks. It's sad. It's really, really sad that Dr. Ford is being used, that Brett Kavanaugh is being used for a political gain, to gain votes. It's like one of the worst reasons in the world to do this. But they want votes in the midterm elections. And they want people to not think. They just want you to be emotionally upset. And, oh, no, it's bad. And I have to believe women. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to vote. You know, I'm going to ask you a slightly off the subject issue. Because, you know, according to Senator Gillibrand, according to Senator Hirono, according to most of the Democratic Party, women must be believed without question. Okay, so let me ask you a question. If you believe that women must be believed without question, then in the New York 22nd race where Anthony Brindisi is running versus a woman, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, who's the incumbent, shouldn't you believe Congresswoman Claudia Tenney? And doesn't that mean that everyone should vote for Congresswoman Claudia Tenney? Because she must be believed without question. Absolutely. And that every single ad that Anthony Brindisi has put out is a lie. And therefore, you must believe everything that Congresswoman Claudia Tenney says, and you should vote for her. Will Senator Gillibrand say that? Does she agree with that? Is she endorsing Congresswoman Claudia Tenney? Is Senator Hirono endorsing Congresswoman Claudia Tenney because she is a woman? If we're supposed to believe a woman, and men cannot speak about this, and they just have to get on board, according to Senator Hirono. And Senator Gillibrand is saying that women are absolute. Well, then how can you have any man run against a woman? And in this case, and in this example, Anthony Brindisi cannot run against Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. He cannot be voted for because a woman, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, is running and everything she says is true, according to them, by their rules. And I wish someone would, you know, I've been trying to ask Senator Gillibrand questions like this for a long time now. She won't answer me. Senator Dianne Feinstein won't answer me. Senator Hirono won't answer me. Probably because I'm a man and I'm asking them a question. But I would love for any woman, because apparently that's all they listen to, and so all men don't need to even be out voting for them because you don't count. But I would love for some woman to ask them this question and explain their answer, because they won't answer me. And I wish they would. I really will. Because what we are seeing in this case for the Senate, do you see how it has so many other factors, how it goes so widespread? This isn't just about the Senate. This is about our lives. This is about every aspect of our lives. It's about everything that's going to happen in our lives. And the Supreme Court is either going to verify that or not. And it's going to devastate this nation. We are headed down a very, very dark path. An insanely and dangerous path we're on that is going to affect us all very negatively if we allow it to continue to go this way. And I'm terrified. I am terrified for our nation because we have individuals who call themselves socialists or democratic socialists, same difference, or progressives, that are in groups like Antifa, which are active domestic terrorists, and political leaders of tomorrow. These are, and by the way, they're all the same people. They just have organizations with different titles for different ways to take your money and to use it against you. But all these individuals are out there, and all I'm seeing is that they're trying to be more totalitarian and take away your ability to have your rights and freedoms because they don't think you deserve it. And they think they are better than you and smarter than you. And that's why you don't have a voice. And you shouldn't speak out. And you shouldn't be involved. And they don't care if you vote or not. I do. I've said it for a decade now. I've said to people, I don't care who you vote for. Have a reason. Get out, have a reason, vote. I want informed voters out there. But I don't hear that from the other side. I don't hear that from Gillibrand. I don't hear that from Hirono and the rest. I don't hear that. And I don't see that in this Senate debate. All I see is that we are looking at allegations get worse and worse, and I guarantee you there will be more over the next week that are going to come out, and they're going to go out there and they're going to say things like what we just saw with Julie Swetnick. An allegation so ridiculous, it is astounding that it has even been mentioned, because it is absolutely absurd. No media would cover it if it were not for the fact that Michael Avenatti did it. And he went to one of the least credible sources to be able to put that out there for the public. I mean, and as a lawyer, he's absolutely insane. When you look at the Julie Swetnick allegation that some woman knowingly and willingly went to parties as an 18-year-old in college with 15-year-olds, where the 15-year-olds were drugging women, and she knew it, and committing gang rapes, and she knew it, and she went back 10 times to an event where women were being drugged and gang raped, and she went back as a woman 10 times to witness this, did not tell anyone, did not protect any of the women, and then she was drinking, which is how she got drugged herself. Does that make any sense? That means she's complicit in multiple crimes, if we are to believe her, as Senator Hirono says, as Senator Gillibrand has said. If we're supposed to believe her with this, as the socialists and the Democratic Socialists want us to believe her, then that means she is complicit in multiple crimes, and she has done more damage to women than pretty much most people that I've seen involved in this case, or alleged to be involved in this case. Matter of fact, in many cases. Why would any lawyer let their client admit to multiple crimes like that? I don't understand it. It's just not credible in any way. And then we have Deborah Ramirez, which is so discreditable that the New York Times would not run the article. So discreditable that the New York Times found that while they were trying to validate it, they found out that Ms. Ramirez was trying to validate it. That she was out there actively trying to find someone to corroborate her story and confirm her story. Not just corroborate, but to confirm it, because she had no idea if it was true or not. That tells you something. And when that is being used as verification, it's not corroboration. The women aren't corroborating each other's stories. They're completely separate. And they don't back each other up because they're not proving a history of anything. None of it is real. None of it deserves to be in print. And how we've gotten to this point in our legal system where we would say that accusation equals guilt and we are willing to punish people for that accusation, we are on the path to a totalitarian nation, a nation of socialism, a nation that will be defined by the ability of people to be judged by race, by gender, by economic status, and by any and every other kind of micro-categorization and prioritization that is done by absolute racist totalitarians. That's just terrifying to me, because that's where we're going. That's what the Democrats want. They want the power to put in activist Supreme Court judges that will allow the nation to become a totalitarian nation that is allowed to categorize and prioritize people based on arbitrary standards and only serve to advance a political agenda. And if there is anyone in America that is not terrified by this, I don't know what you're thinking. But we're supposed to not talk about that. And I'm the bad guy because I'm saying that I want to protect America from a totalitarian mindset that destroys individual freedoms and rights. And I've ever had this happen to me on Friday. I spent all day talking to people on social media, and people are attacking me, telling me that I deserve no respect. I am a sexist. I am a pig. I am evil, because I'm saying that we need to have proof to be able to justify and protect people. Because if we don't protect our nation, no one has a right to anything. If we don't protect our fundamental rules, everyone is at risk. And yet I'm told, no, I'm the evil person because of that. I'm bad. I'm the bad person because, I'm raising these questions and holding everyone to the same standard. Because I guarantee you, if Dr. Ford or any of the women that are making allegations were to come out and actually provide the information and clarifications that I'm speaking about, they would get exactly what they want. You would see Dr. Ford, he would lose the nomination and he'd probably get convicted immediately. Because we have validation. I'm actually fighting for more than Dianne Feinstein, more than the Democratic Party. I'm actually fighting more for Dr. Ford than anyone in the Democratic Party has done so far. Because I'm trying to get the proof of what she says so that everyone has no doubt and there is no way to invalidate her comments. And we're hearing Democrats reject that. We're hearing them say, you shouldn't ask for validation. You shouldn't ask for corroboration, which would actually prove our point and get the actual political gain that they want, that no one would be able to question at that point. There would be no question. It would take it out of the realm of politics and make it a fact. And no one would deny and doubt that we have to get rid of Brett Kavanaugh. But instead, they're saying, no, we don't need any of that because you should believe her. She believes she's correct, which doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it a fact. You can believe something that is wrong. There are people on the internet, go onto Facebook, go onto Twitter, go onto YouTube, look up the term flat earth. There are people who believe the earth is flat in 2018, and they vehemently believe that. Am I supposed to believe them too? There are people who believe that President Obama is a member of ISIS. Am I to believe that? There are people who believe that 9/11 was an inside job. Are we to believe that? And there are people who say that that many Democrats are evil, which I don't agree. I do not ascribe to that. But are we to believe that? Some of them are women. Does that mean I need to believe that? This is a trap. It's a political trap. And the only answer to this political trap is that we go with the First Amendment and get truth. We ask questions. We get answers. We go with our legal system. We put the burden on the accuser, who has to provide us with very simple but very clear things like a time, a date, a place, people who can corroborate this. We go with facts, and we follow that up. We use the freedoms that we have to allow for the freedom for everyone. And everyone wins. That's the best thing we could do. Tina mentioned, apparently, you are only supposed to believe the flat earthers if they are women. Yeah, and there you go. A woman who's a flat earther said that, the earth is flat. That's it. She's told me, it's on YouTube, so it must be true because she has a video and it's on YouTube and YouTube hasn't hidden it as they do with a lot of my work. So YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, they're not suppressing it because they do and have factually suppressed things, as I spoke about. And if you missed the very beginning of this, it'll be on my website, on my podcast, the No Soundbites Allowed podcast, and you'll be able to hear the beginning about some of the information you probably didn't hear about this week, and some of the suppression of ideas that are going on right now. And the jingling you hear in the background, by the way, I'll also mention is my little puppy, Con. Con, come here. And because I'm getting ready to stop, we've been talking for just about 2 hours here, and I want everyone to see, that's Con. There you go. Hey, everyone, there's Con. Okay, good boy. So that's where you hear all the jingling all over the place. That's just him acting up. And so I wanted to, and actually I'm glad I got it's a slightly happier note to end this on. But I truly believe at this moment, do I have doubts about what Dr. Ford said? Yes and no. I believe, without doubt, that Dr. Ford believes something happened to her. And I believe something did happen to her in her lifetime. Something happened to Dr. Ford. I don't know who did it. I don't think it was Brett Kavanaugh. But I think something happened to her, and I'm sorry to hear that. And I hope she's getting help for that. And I hope that she's able to work through that. And I hope that whoever did it to her gets prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Whether it's 36 years or 40 years later, I don't care. But I don't believe, in the way she has presented it, and to all evidence that we've been able to find, that it was Brett Kavanaugh. And if that proof does come out, then I would support removing Brett Kavanaugh as a Supreme Court justice, but only if we were able to corroborate and there was some fact. Because I don't take belief as an answer. It isn't. It doesn't mean that it's true. It is not meaning it is fact. It doesn't even mean that she got it right, that she remembers it right. All it means is that she believes it. And that's fantastic. And I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the First Amendment. I believe in the Constitution. And that overrides my personal individual beliefs. And it means that she has a burden and she has to live up to that burden and prove her case. And I will support her in getting that proof and also in making that proof effective. And I think we all should. I think that's very important. And that is a principle we need. Because otherwise it will chill. I can't think of anyone under those circumstances that would run for an elected office, that would open up a business. Hell, it's dangerous to even talk to people as you walk down the street. You can lose everything, your home, your business, your reputation, everything, based on a false accusation. And when that's the case, we all lose. I don't know where the Supreme Court nomination goes. I don't know. I believe Brett Kavanaugh gets approved. I think he gets onto the court, and I think he'll do a fantastic job. But I do know that if he doesn't, and if we don't see people come out and vote in the midterm elections, and we see that Democrats are able to move forward with their agenda, an agenda that is totalitarian, that puts the burden on the accused rather than accuser, based on the mere fact that that person happens to be a certain gender, or have a certain political belief, or a certain racial background, then we all lose, and this nation suffers for it. But these are my thoughts. Please share this with everyone. Share the No Soundbites Allowed podcast with everyone. Give me your thoughts. Make your comments. We all learn by having conversation. Let's have that conversation. And I look forward to it. And I look forward to you being at the next program, at the next No Soundbites Allowed podcast. And I'll talk to you guys all very soon. Thank you.